We all know what it's like to be afraid. In 2015, when I would travel to different places around the world competing for Team USA, I would find myself, like most athletes, nervous, but my nervousness and my anxiety would manifest itself into this debilitating fatigue. I would get on the fencing strip and feel really, really tired. Imagine having to compete when really all you want to do is take a nap. To say the least, it didn't go over too well. In 2015, when the Olympic qualifiers began, I had a decision to make. I could allow the negativity and the different obstacles that had been placed in front of me to affect me, but I chose happiness. But how did I get here? I didn't always imagine myself going to the Olympics. It wasn't until after I graduated from college that I even began to compete internationally. I remember never thinking about the Olympic Games as a kid. And if you would have told me as a kid I would go on to become the first Muslim woman to represent the United States and come home with an Olympic medal, I probably would have called you crazy. I grew up in Maplewood, New Jersey. I'm a half an hour outside of New York City. My mom's school teacher, my dad's police officer. And in our family, sports were just a very integral part of our upbringing. My parents saw sport not just as an opportunity to keep us physically active, but also they knew where we were after school and before they got home from work. We weren't really given the option of whether or not we would play sport, but rather which sport we would play. So I have these really early memories as a kid having our town recreation book placed in front of me. And I got to choose whichever sport I wanted to try. I played tennis, I ran track, I played volleyball. And for me, in each of these different sports, my mom always had to change the uniform for me. As a Muslim kid who covers my arms and my legs, I always felt out of uniform from my teammates. I spent a lot of time in sporting goods stores trying to find, long sleeves or long pants that matched our school colors. And I remember at 12 years old, I was with my mom, we were in the car, we were parked at a stoplight. And in my town, the local high school, there's these huge picture windows, and you can see into the school cafeteria. I saw from the road these athletes inside. They had on long white pants, they had on long white jackets, and at the time, they had on these helmets, what we thought were helmets. And at the time, my mom's like, I have no idea what this sport is, but when you get to high school, I want you to try it out. And that's literally how I got into fencing. When I started competing in fencing, it was this unique opportunity for me not to just be physically active, but fencing uniquely accommodated my religious beliefs. It allowed me for the first time in my life to truly feel a part of the team. I was in uniform with my teammates. Even though on my fencing team I was the only African American and one of the only minorities on the team, I truly love my team. As many of amazing opportunities that were placed in front of me through the sport of fencing, I also had these weird obstacles that would happen to me as a kid. I remember on my fencing team was the first time I had ever been referred to by the N-word. One of my teammates called me an N-word, and I remember my coach not handling the situation very well. This same coach referred to me and my best friend on the team, who happened to be Jewish, as M1 and J1. I remember being at a local fencing competition, and again, kind of getting used to being singled out for being different. A parent came to me and she said, "Did you know that there are black people who fence in New York City?" And I remember being pretty upset, like, oh, no, she didn't, right? But I remember going home and telling my mom, there are black people who fence in New York. So we got on Google, we Googled it, and we found the Peter Westbrook Foundation, a nonprofit started by a 6-time Olympian who wanted to expose minority youth, people from underserved communities, to the sport of fencing. It was the first time in my life I saw fencing at the elite level. I saw minorities be successful in the sport of fencing. World champions, Olympians, Olympic medalists. It allowed me to kind of unconsciously graft my dreams and aspirations within the sport of fencing. For me, I always saw fencing as a means to an end. It was an opportunity for me, being one of 5 kids, to go to school on a scholarship. That was my plan at 13 years old. I didn't want to go $150,000 into debt, so I wanted to use fencing to go to a good university. So it happens, I received an academic scholarship to go to school, but I was recruited to Duke University, where I graduated. I went on to become a 3-time All-American at Duke. When I graduated from school, I was studying for the LSAT, looking for a job, and I remember looking at Team USA and thinking, it's not very diverse. I didn't see anyone who looked like me on Team USA. There had never been a woman of color on the United States Women's Sabre team, and I feel like I had this opportunity. Even though I had never been to an international competition, I had a really abysmal national ranking, no international ranking. It's kind of a shot in the dark to qualify for a US team. But I took the opportunity. I changed coaches. I ended up making my first team in 2010, and I've been on the team ever since. In the Muslim community, it's kind of cool because being one of the only Muslim women involved in sport at the elite level, I've always been referred to as an Olympian. And I remember I was at an event in 2012, right after the 2012 Olympics, and a little girl came to me, and she was asking for an autograph and for a photo. And she referred to me as an Olympian. She said, are you the Muslim Olympic fencer? And before I could tell her that I wasn't an Olympian, I remember my friend saying, she's not an Olympian. Don't worry, this girl's not a friend anymore. Really, she's not. But I remember in that moment, I wanted an Olympic team more for this little girl and more for my younger self than I'd ever wanted an Olympic team in my life. I wanted to change the narrative for Muslim girls, for Muslims in general, for African Americans, for minorities, for anyone who had ever been told no, who never felt represented in a particular space, who didn't feel like they were welcome in a particular space. Qualifying for the United States Olympic team was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But I remember in April of 2015, when our qualifiers began, I made this conscious decision that I would be happy. I wouldn't allow any of the negative things I would hear. I wouldn't allow the people who would come in my life who would tell me that they didn't believe in my journey, they didn't believe in my abilities, that I would never be an Olympian. I didn't allow that to seep in and to affect me. I believed in myself, I believed in my journey. I remember telling myself that I was a champion over and over and over, not because I necessarily was in every competition, but because I needed that energy, I needed to be positive in order to make my dreams a reality. When I qualified for the Olympic team in 2016, and by the grace of God came home with an Olympic medal, it was one of the greatest honors of my life to represent my country, to represent my hometown, to represent my family, my friends, to represent all of you at the Olympic Games for Team USA. If you would have told me 30 years ago that I'd be in this position, probably would have called you crazy. If I had allowed other people to dictate my journey for me, if I had allowed misconceptions about who I am as a woman, as an African American, as a Muslim, to affect how I felt about myself, to affect my journey, I wouldn't be standing here before you today. I tell young people this all the time, in particular our girls, that you have to believe in yourself first. You have to believe in your journey, and never allow anyone else to dictate your journey for you. Everything you need to be successful is already inside. You just have to take a leap of faith and believe you can have anything you want in this world if you make it a source of good and you make it an opportunity to give back to the community. Thank you so much.